episode 3 of the Mindset Reflexology show. I'm your host and instructor. Welcome from wherever you are in the world. What you see is just me on screen. As you'll probably notice, there's no high-tech intro videos, graphics, any of that sort of stuff with my show. It's just me on screen talking about what I love, what I'm passionate about, and that is the psychology, the mindset that's needed for traders, day traders, fund managers, wholesale and retail traders to shift and change their mind into the one that's needed for trading success. That's what this show is all about. Of course, the components of mindset, mindfulness, and reshaping your mind apply across the spectrum of life, but specifically, we're talking about trading psychology. So, as always with the show, I have my episode script and running sheet in front of me, which I'll be reading from and referring to in order to stay on track, make sure that the value of the contents is focused and contained in the sort of 10 or 15, maybe sort of 20 minutes of the episode. So, given that it's just clicking over 9 o'clock now, I'll get started. So I want to start with the quote, I guess, or the snippet I put in the post during the week promoting this episode. There comes a moment in the evolution of a trader that they really have to look back and say, what's going on here? They have the knowledge base, they have the intelligence, they have that winning desire, and they have the motivation. Yet what they do is they keep looking at their trading account and they see where it's at. And they see the potential that they have in trading, and they realize that something is blocking them. And by the process of elimination, they've discovered that it's them. It's their own mindset that they're bringing to trading that blocks their ability to take it to the next step. And this is where we go. Ultimately, trading is about mastering emotions and mastering the trading mind. That's what we want to look at here today. And what does that require? What does that require of us? So, the very first thing that we have to take a look at is this whole notion of biology and mind. What most traders don't get is that the mind and emotion cannot be separated, and that top-down thinking, rational thinking, is not king. It may think it's king sitting on the throne, but its authority is subjugated by emotion. We often think, well, I should be logical, I should be rational, I should be able to push emotions out of the way. Well, the answer is to that question, no, you can't, because there's no time you're not in emotion. As a matter of fact, what you may want to call reason is not reason at all. It's rationalization. As man is not a rational animal. He is a rationalizing animal. And you start to begin to realize that what we have been taught to believe is wrong. We've been led to think of the mind as supreme and to think of emotion as something that just happens. When in fact, no, it's the exact opposite. In fact, it is that emotion that is the horse that drives the cart. The cart is the mind. And we begin to realize, wow, we've put it backwards all of this time. Like Einstein has said, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And that's what traders must recognize. You know, they may have what they think of as a good mind, I should say, and it may well be in other areas of life. But in trading, it's not. It doesn't work in the environment of trading. And all of a sudden, we realize, wow, what is it about the emotional brain and the thinking brain that are so at odds with one another? Well, they have two very different purposes. So let's look at that a little bit more closely. The emotional brain is all about survival. It wants to control environment, the outcome. It wants to make things happen in the short term for our survival. And it wants to be right based on that formula that's worked so well for evolution. It worked for success of the species, and it's wired deeply into all of us. And it's still with us. We tend to call it caveman brain, and you'll hear me refer to it as caveman brain quite often. So let's look at the thinking brain, the rational brain. That's the part of the brain that allows you to be able to think in probabilities, okay, and is so vital for trading. We've been able to think in probabilities, not feel that we think in probabilities. So we have to be able to think in probabilities, not feel that we think in probabilities. I hope you understand the difference. So what happens with traders is they believe, okay, I know how to do this. I can think in probabilities. I know about probabilities. I know that I can't win every trade. I'm going to lose, blah, 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 blah. They're talking the talk. But when they're risking capital, real money, it's like a bomb went off. And what they discover is that it's not that they really perform as under stress. It's that a real aha moment. They don't perform under stress the way rationally they think they are going to. That's the emotional brain taking over. So what they do is suddenly capital gets put at risk and everything blows up. Now that's because the emotional brain relates that vulnerability, putting capital on the line is that very vulnerability. It relates it as a threat of death, and it triggers to fight, flight, and freeze, that impulse. So despite what you may want to think, that old brain, the caveman brain, the emotional brain is going, no, this is a fight for our lives. We have to be on it. We have to act very quickly from a survival instinct. And all of a sudden, you get into over trading, you get into revenge trading, and you watch people not being able to pull the trigger. That's fear. So you see people getting out of a trade going, I just don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking, right? And they come back to the senses, when the emotion dies back down. And what happens is we all say, I don't know what happened. I got possessed. So in some ways you have. So let's explore that a bit further. What happened is you got hijacked by your survival instincts of the emotional brain. That emotional brain sees uncertainty as a biological threat to its existence. And the moment you have risk, have uncertainty, and capital risk, putting money on the line is exactly that, you trigger that fight, flight response. And that's what's happening to you. Put very simply, that's the brain you brought to the table. That's the brain we all bring to the table, unless you're that 1 in 1,000 who for some reason won the genetic lottery and hits the ground running already like that. But the other 99.99%, that brain that gets brought to the table is that brain. And that's why I consistently say over and over that the mind you brought to trading is not going to be the mind that's going to produce success in trading. It's going to have to be different. You're going to have to intentionally retool the way the brain and the mind work together. So you're going to have to retool the way rational and emotional work together rather than opposing each other. So firstly, you're going to have to recognize that emotions are not optional, okay? You don't have freedom from emotions. You can have freedom of emotion if you work at it. And we also need to understand and accept that all thinking is emotional state dependent. Even rational thinking is emotional state dependent. So all thought is emotional state dependent. So you can see the power of the emotional brain. So whenever your emotions are triggered by uncertainty, there's your thinking. Very few traders bridge that gap. They want to control outcome. They want to win. They can't seem to get the idea that, no, I have to bridge the gap between survival thinking and probability thinking. I hope that makes sense. I really, really want that message to sink in. You have to bridge the gap between survival thinking, which we all bring to the table, and probability thinking, which is what we need to shift to. So how do you do that? Well, the first and foremost thing is to recognize that an emotion is biological. It's not psychological. It actually takes over your psychology. So emotions are biological. They're not psychological. They take over psychology. So, and then it becomes all about avoiding risk. It's all about survival. It's all about controlling the outcome, making things happen and being right. That is natural human survival instinct. And yet when you get into trading, what happens is you have no control over outcome at all. You never know what's going to happen. No matter how smart you are, no matter how much research you've done, you do not know what's going to happen. It's a guess at best. So you're already producing the emotional brain to get into fight flight right there. And outside of your current awareness, your emotional caveman brain has already grabbed the wheel, right? And taking control. So then you put capital at risk, and suddenly the vulnerability of uncertainty triggers to fight flight, and there you are. This is a major glitch if you want to be a successful trader, right? And it happens like that, so fast, 0.06 of a second. Emotions kick in, and the chemistry of that emotion is in your bloodstream, and the hijacking has begun. So how do you solve that problem? How do you fix that problem? So the first step is to regulate emotions, learning how to regulate the emotion. And remember what I said earlier, that is, emotions are biological. That is a key insight into what emotions are. So by being biological, they have a biological signature. That signature is part breathing, part muscle tension, part heart rate. And when you start looking at that, you're going, well, my breath control is a lot about the way my biology is going to produce the emotion. It controls literally whether or not you remain calm or whether or not it triggers into fight flight. That's how important breathing is to emotional regulation. So by controlling your breathing, you can actually alter the emotion. And the same thing with muscle tension. When you feel tension in the body, the jaw, the shoulders, all that stuff that happens when risking capital, what you're doing is feeling emotional arousal heading towards fight flight. So it begins with emotional arousal. And right now, you don't have the skills to pull it back off the edge of a cliff, right? That's what you have to learn as a trader. So by those 3 physical symptoms, by looking at heart rate and knowing I have to keep it lowered within a range, I know that I have to let the tension in my body calm down, and I know that I have to start breathing in a different way to be able to dampen the emotion, to keep it regulated and under control. That's a very, very powerful thing, because you get to intervene and don't allow the emotion to trigger into fight flight where all the crazy stuff happens. Very important. So that's where all that possession stuff and just getting hijacked takes place. But even there, understand this emotional regulation only gets you to the door of the mind. It's inside the mind where we want to go, but you won't get there without learning emotional regulation. And we must then develop a skill called mindfulness to be able to look at our beliefs, at our thoughts, not as who we are, but as who has captured the organization of self. Right? That's what we all are. The current version that you call me or I is simply an organization of your self as it currently is, that's been captured by that caveman survival instinct. And I talk about that a lot more elsewhere and in other episodes, but for the time being, we'll move on. So the key is what you're really looking at is going, in mindfulness, you learn that my thoughts and I are not the same. So there's a difference between the awareness of the thought and the thought itself. And you begin to realize my thoughts and beliefs just represent one construction of a self that adapted to survive in an environment, in the world. That's what all of us represent. The current version of self is simply a version, a construction of the self that adapted to survive in the environment, in the world. And what you're discovering is that world, no matter how successful you were back then and there, is not working in the new world of trading. And you have to say, I need to alter my beliefs that I'm projecting onto the screen of the markets. And you start going, okay, what I know is that I'm prone to fight flight. That's the caveman living within us. And that I need to be able to regulate that. But at the same time, my experience with managing uncertainty, what did I learn about it? And most people discover that ultimately they really don't have a good fix on being able to engage and manage uncertainty successfully with a calm, cool, disciplined manner. That has to be reworked. That has to be retooled. And you get down to the belief of where you literally start reworking the belief about your ability to manage uncertainty, a fundamental life skill that's absolutely essential for successful trading. And that's where the magic happens in trading. Right there is reworking your own belief about your ability to manage uncertainty. That's where the battle is fought and won or lost. Right? Suddenly what happens is the uncertainty doesn't change. Out there, the markets, they do what they do. That doesn't change. The challenges of trading don't change. The potential of losses and gains don't change. What changes is the mind based on your beliefs that you bring into the moment of engaging uncertainty, the performance of yourself in the moment of uncertainty and the mind that you bring. That's what you can influence. So by doing that, you change the conversation the biology and the mind have about your ability to perform in the midst of uncertainty. We're starting to shift that conflict between emotional and rational brain into a partnership rather than a conflict. And when that happens, you're no longer trying to win or lose. You're focused on performing. Please remember that sentence. Write it down. When that happens, you're no longer trying to win or lose. Your focus shifts to performing well. And when you're focused on performing, you can control that. And that's what allows you to take the next step. And that is developing a performance mind rather than a winning mind. A performing mind rather than a winning mind. That is the pathway to trading mastery and also the pathway to self-mastery. The two are inextricably intertwined. Trading mastery and self-mastery are interlinked, as most pursuits in life are, that your mastery of yourself is directly connected to the mastery of whatever it is you're pursuing, particularly in trading. So you've got to let go of winning and say, what I can do is I can perform. I have no idea what's going to happen in the market, despite my forecast and predictions. Controlling outcome, winning is an illusion. However, what I can control is the mind I'm bringing into that moment of performance. And friends, when you have a working methodology, your system that gives you an edge, right? That's the mental edge. The performance mind is the mental edge, the emotional edge that you need to be able to drive your method edge. That's how you do it. So you're developing a method edge is not that hard. There's many trading systems, but it's the mental edge, the emotional edge, the psychological edge of being able to perform in the moment of uncertainty that allows your system with an edge to be executed. Right? So you're not going to use affirmations. You're not going to use visualizations. You're not going to use NLP or law of attraction to change that deep-seated belief. Please understand that. The work has to be done at that deep level. You're going to have to use and develop and use emotional intelligence, which, by the way, is a key aspect of what I teach. I teach how to go in and correct the beliefs literally at a synapse level, at a neurobiological level, right? That's where the work is done. That allows you to change your response to uncertainty. That's mindset reflexology. So the reflex that we all bring to the table is to reflex to fight, flight, freeze, because that survival instinct is all powerful. So what we do is we rebuild that reflexology to respond to uncertainty differently. That's the trick, friends. That's the piece you're missing that allows you to move your mindset from kind of blowing up and messing up to where it's comfortable with uncertainty. Now, if you want to learn more about this, you can check out my website. Please follow the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, website, watch more videos, check information out, check my programs out, check my offerings, because that's where I teach the actual work. So this show is about the what to do, right? And if you want to learn how to do it, I can obviously help you with that. Now, because what we've actually got to do is change the belief system that engages uncertainty. That's the key. Shifting from a winning mindset to a probability mindset, from a certainty mindset to a probability mindset with money on the line. That is the key differentiator. Putting risk into the equation changes everything. Okay? Hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope there's some learnings there. Check it out on the YouTube channel, watch it over and over again, and really take on board the lessons and the pathway. Any questions, post them in the comments. I will respond to them when I can. Let's just have a look. No, there's no comment or no questions at the moment. So after this episode finishes, pop questions into the comments, whether it's the LinkedIn feed or YouTube, and I will answer those questions. Thanks, friends. Have a fantastic day, morning, evening, wherever you are. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you for attending. Have a great week.